Live from the entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada, folks. Welcome to the program. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Good to be here with you as always. Lots going on. Obviously, the shutdown sputtering. We'll get to the news on that in a moment. I think one of the big L's, big losses for the Democrats here with the shutdown is that everybody is talking about these SNAP benefits. And frankly, people are aghast. The sheer numbers, the staggering math behind SNAP benefits, WIC benefits, welfare generally is astonishing. Yes, the high-level number is 42 million people. 42 million people, we are being told by the mainstream media scolds, will go without food if Republicans don't do the right thing. The right thing, of course, is to fold and capitulate to the Democrats, to the Schumer-led Senate caucus, Democrat caucus, and basically allow for things like Medicaid, Medicare for illegal immigrants. But if you go back to the 42 million people, this is one in, what is this, 1 in 8 people in America? I don't know about you. Did you know, did you realize that this program was so widespread? 1 in every $8 we spend in our federal non-defense discretionary budget goes to this. Mike Davis writes that these are staggering numbers. We're not providing temporary assistance. We've created a permanent welfare state. Now, reform, people say, well, what do you do to fix this? And I'm very simple and straightforward. Remember when, just at the beginning of Trump's term, we started talking about doing some reforms to this, and I think one of the proposals floated by Secretary Kennedy about soda. It was saying, look, if you got food stamps, you can't use it to buy soda and other sugary drinks. But at the time, people were freaking out about it, and I remember saying my reaction to it here on the program was pretty straightforward and common sense. If you're getting public assistance, yes, we don't want you to starve. Fine, we accept that premise. But we should be talking about whole foods, right? We should be talking about beans, rice, basic essentials. You don't get to live like a king on the backs of working, tax-paying Americans. It's just not right. Now, I'll tell you why the Republicans are winning the shutdown fight. Because, number one, here we are in the midst of the shutdown. We're talking about SNAP fraud and abuse. This is not what the Democrats wanted. It's a huge loss for them. And, I joked, the couple of things that have come out of this so far is that Chuck Schumer, his career's over. The Democrats have managed to, piss off the largest public sector union. And then, of course, something about the East Wing. I guess that was part of this all as well. But that also has become largely irrelevant. Notice how that has gone away. Yeah, here and there, people still talking about the Trump ballroom, the Lincoln Project, desperate to keep it revived. They're out there calling it this is rich, by the way, calling it the Epstein ballroom. They're trying to get that to be a thing. Lincoln Project, led by Rick Wilson. George Conway's involved in it as well. But it's rich because, of course, one of their co-founders, John Weaver, was credibly accused by a number of young, underaged men of inappropriate, unwanted, and illegal sexual advances. So I think they should keep Epstein out of this. But regardless, that whole issue of the East Wing and the ballroom sort of fading into distant memory. And now SNAP benefits set to expire. And the Democrats are up in arms about this. The Democrats have pressure on them by the public sector unions. I think the pilots union joined in support of a reopening, a clean CR. So this is in addition to the AFGE. And what else? Oh, well, the SNAP benefits. Again, putting this another way, Republicans will get pressure from the military, right? The military, if they don't get paid, Republicans are going to hear about it. When SNAP beneficiaries, when welfare queens don't get their checks, that's when the Democrats hear about it. It's one of the big differences between our two parties, frankly. Now, guess what? Trump, and this was reiterated earlier today in a closed-door meeting by Vice President J.D. Vance, who told attendees that they had a plan to pay the military. Can't pay everybody, but they've got a plan to pay most of everybody, and they're trying to see to it that payments continue. So the Trump administration at least has some way that they are able to pay the military without approval from Congress. Guess what? Congress can't pay $1 of SNAP benefits, or Democrats can't pay any SNAP benefits without the approval of Congress. And that requires Republicans. There was a blink, I'm calling it a blink, reported from Washington, D.C. about 45 minutes ago, where Schumer and other Senate Democrats are putting forward a plan, a proposal where SNAP benefits and WIC would get paid. I hope the Republicans don't go for that because they've got the Democrats dead to rights. They hold firm and say, look, it's a clean CR or nothing. This is what it is. We're going to reopen the whole government. We're going to pay everybody or nobody gets paid. Democrats wouldn't do a carve out for the military. They refused that. So why should the Republicans meet the Democrats in their time of need? I don't believe that that ought to happen. So we'll see how this is a very fluid situation. I could see this entire thing ending by Friday. Privately, a number of Democrat senators are expressing exasperation behind the scenes, exasperation over Democrat Party leadership. They would love to defect. They would love to vote with Republicans for a reopening of the government. They're worried about the poll numbers. They're worried about the raw math. Because Democrats are not coming out of this pretty, and we'll get to this here after the break. Well, CNN went through it. Even the mainstream media now recognizing there is definite damage done to the Democratic Party brand. And in a critical time when Democrats ought to be, with Trump in the White House, ought to be picking up steam ahead of the midterm elections 1 year from now. Where they ought to be is several percentage points higher than they are. And this is the cause of this is a stupid shutdown. This is the greatest political miscalculation of the Democratic Party in recent memory. And I include in that the running of Joe Biden as president in 2024. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Friends, I'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned. Lots to go over today.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Nevada's favorite recovering Californian here in studio, live and local in beautiful downtown Las Vegas, and everywhere else you are listening to the program. Great to have you with us. Email, let's get to that, folks. I always forget to do this top of the hour, and then just speeding through everything we've got to cover, and I don't get to it. So Sam at whatsrightshow.com. That's the email to reach me, and I do check that periodically through the show. and on X, formerly known as Twitter, at What's Right Sam. You also want to make sure you follow the podcast. Sometimes you miss the show, and there's a risk that the show that you've missed was a good one. Covered some important stuff. So wherever you get your podcasts, What's Right Show, click to subscribe and follow, and you'll get all of our updated shows as they come online. So what's going on in D.C.? The shutdown, obviously some people out there feeling real pain. 42 million people on SNAP benefits, set to not get their benefits, panic in the air, and a real conversation about why we have 1 in 8 Americans dependent on food stamps. Gosh, you go back to the era of Bill Clinton, and some real concern about giving people money for nothing, giving people who are able-bodied welfare, discouraging them from working, from being contributing members of society, contributing to the economy, putting them in a permanently dependent position, which, of course, is why the Democratic Party right now is panicking. And they've proposed a bill that funds only WIC and SNAP benefits across the country. This is a play to placate their base. I don't see the Republicans taking the bite. John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, was on Fox just about an hour ago and was asked specifically about this shutdown and how he sees it would go. This is what he said.
I think there are people who are sincerely want to get this figured out.
Have they
on the
told
Democrat
you
side.
that they're ready? They're about ready?
There are, and of course the challenge is the Democrat leadership could care less about this. And Chuck Schumer, they're in a box. I mean, like I said, they are running scared of the far left in this country right now, and that characterizes a whole bunch of Senate Democrats too. But there are some rank and file Democrats, I believe, and we have had, as you said, back channel conversations that have been going on for some time that have intensified here of late, and hopefully that will lead to a breakthrough. But that's what it's going to take. It's going to take rank and file Democrats who organically come to the conclusion that this doesn't make sense for them, politically long term for them either. I don't think this is a winning issue when you shut the government down.
Well, listen, here's the simple math. I'll take the Senate Majority Leader at his word that there are people having these conversations with him. I have no reason to doubt him. But the math's simple. We need 7 Democrats. I think plus or minus, given the day, depending on what our own senator here in Nevada, Senator Cortez Masto, does or is thinking, there are about 3 votes, you count her, for a reopening, for a clean CR. And that body of Democrats, by the way, I think that group is largely led by Fetterman in Pennsylvania, right? He's been very vocal about doing what's right for the country and not playing partisan politics. So anyway, so that's 4 more. I mean, they need, Republicans have 53 votes, then Democrats have the rest. There's an independent in there somewhere, but regardless, Democratic caucus at 47. So there are 7 Democrats. So 4 more Democrats would need to come over to the Republican side. That's not an impossible lift. You could get 4 defectors. And ultimately, I think what the Senate Democrats will do is make it seem as though these 4 people, defected spontaneously. They'll be called traitors. You'll hear a lot of that. These traitors to the Democratic Party. Now, the people that can't take a hit are the senators who come from deep blue states, where they are, as John Thune points out, they're terrified of the leftists, of the crazies, of the Mamdani types. These raving socialists are running around with pitchforks, and they're not going to be very pleased. So, I don't know. They're going to find somebody here to take the fall, and people have opined who that could be. But there's a few different paths forward on this. Now, I mentioned just before the break, CNN did a takedown of this. Harry Enton going through the math, through the numbers of how this is affecting Democrats, how it's affecting them numerically in the polls. And one takeaway here is that actually Republican numbers, approval numbers for Republicans have gone up during the shutdown. They've gone up overall. Listen to what Harrington says about this.
You might think, given that the Republicans are in charge of both the House and the Senate, that a government shutdown might actually hurt the Republican brand. But in fact, it hasn't. If anything, it's been helped a little bit. Take a look here, the shift in net popularity versus pre-shutdown. When we're looking at the Republican Party overall, that brand actually up 2 points. That's within the margin of error, but clearly it hasn't dropped. Come over to this side of the screen. Look at the net approval ratings for Republicans in Congress. It's actually up 5 points since pre-shutdown. So what we're seeing here is the Republican brand in Congress has actually improved somewhat compared to where we were pre-shutdown, despite the fact that Republicans control. And that's the math that John Thune and Mike Johnson are looking at is, well, hey, why should we give, and electorally speaking, when our brand has actually improved a little bit?
This is exactly right. Now, okay, what isn't working? Right? The clear takeaway here is the Democrats' effort to paint this as the Republicans control the White House, the Republicans control the Senate, the Republicans control the House of Representatives. This is the Republican shutdown. That messaging obviously is failing, right? Otherwise, Republican numbers in the CNN index, okay, which I'm going to give that the CNN discount. The numbers are probably in reality higher, okay, better for Republicans. The numbers would be going the opposite direction. So the branding efforts by the Democratic Party failing in real time. Now, where is the support coming from? Who is it that's fueling this rise? Answer, it's not just registered Republicans. And that is another huge takeaway, another huge hit on the Democrats who are pushing the shutdown. Wow.
So I think it's two groups that it's so important to keep an eye on. All right, change in the Republican Congress's net approval rating versus pre-shutdown. It's rallying the base for sure. Look at this, the net approval rating up 12 points versus pre-shutdown. But it's not just with the base. It's also with the middle of the electorate. Look at this, among independents. It's up 8 points as well. So we've got a situation here where Republicans with the shutdown are actually rallying their base, but it's also something that's not hurting them with the folks in the middle. If anything, it's helping them with folks in the middle. And this is the type of math that if you're Republicans, you like to see, right? Because something could rally the base but alienate those in the middle, or something could rally those in the middle but alienate the base. But the truth is, we're not seeing that. What we're seeing is the Republican brand has actually gotten better among independents, and it's also gotten better among Republicans as well, that Republican brand when it comes to those in Congress. So again, what's the electoral reason that Republicans would give in at this point?
The independents are a huge driver of Republican support in the House and in the Senate. Big wow. So the Democrats, in an effort to placate their Democratic socialist base, the radicals within the party, are alienating independents. And what does this mean for the midterms a year from now? I mentioned this also just before the break. Well, it's not good for the Democrats.
The generic congressional ballot, which traditionally Democrats have done really well on. And if you look at this point back when Trump was president the first time around, Democrats are up 11 points. Look at where it is now. Democrats are ahead, but they're actually only up 3 points. This is, in fact, the worst position Democrats have been on in a generic ballot at this point in midterm when there was a Republican president in the last 20 years. And this is no different from pre-shutdown. So Republicans aren't losing on this metric either. They become more popular, and they're actually in a pretty good position for them historically when it comes to the generic congressional ballot.
This is a concerning number for Democrats, are you saying, Congress?
This is a concerning number for Democrats because it's considerably worse than they traditionally do in midterm elections when there's a Republican president.
Now, this is exactly right. Okay, so when you hear stories tonight, when you're driving home and listening to the news, and you see that, hear that the Democrats are looking for ways to pay SNAP benefits and pay WIC benefits, it's what this is all about. They're in absolute free fall territory, committing political suicide. Okay, but I'm just saying, these are self-inflicted wounds that the Democrats are doing to themselves every day that this thing drags on. Now, when your enemy, when your opponent is in the middle of sabotaging himself, what do? You get the hell out of the way is what you do. So every time you see a story about Trump being in Japan or Malaysia, and oh, Trump, how can you be in the opposite, different hemisphere while all this is going on? Trump knows exactly what he's doing. He's letting the Democrats, cook in their own juices. Be right back, folks. Don't go anywhere. Greetings, patriots, Americans, friends, and, well, listen, common sense people everywhere. Sam Mirejovsky here. The What's Right show brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. Now, let me say something about that for a minute here, if I may. The most common sense thing to do when you've been in an accident, when you've been hurt, is to get some advice. I know a lot of people just don't do it. And I know this because I'll get the call. I'll get the phone call. Somebody months later said, well, I had this happen. I didn't think I needed a lawyer, and then will take me through an absolute horror story of what they had to deal with talking to the insurance company. It's brutal. Yes, they're not your friend. It's an issue. It's a problem. And it happens across the board. Good people get taken advantage of. You are a good person, and you need to do what's right. And that means get Sam and Ash Injury Law on your side. It's the only law firm to trust because we are people like you. We have a great team, solid individuals who love what they do. They love helping people. And you get that, when you call the firm, it's right away. You get that feeling. It's, talking to the insurance company, maybe even talking to another lawyer. Maybe you're disappointed with the lawyer you're with. You can switch. It doesn't cost you anything. It's another important misconception a lot of people have. So Sam and Ash Injury Law will help you get back on track, help you get on the path to better. And also you'll just enjoy talking to us. That much I can vouch for. Sam Mirejovsky for Sam and Ash Injury Law, 702-820-1234, 702-820-1234. Don't put it off. Call today. 702-820-1234. Accidents in California and Nevada, because you deserve what's right. Folks, remember yesterday I mentioned the story. This is a piece in semaphore.com talking about left-wing ideas wrecking the Democrats' brand. And it's coming to my mind today again because I had a conversation about it with Alan Stock here on KXNT at this morning, as I do it every Tuesday. And so we're talking about this piece because he's fascinated by it as well. And there's a callback that I wanted to make to a study a piece that was published a little bit earlier this year about patriotism based on political party. Remember when Gallup did this? We talked about it when it came out. Gallup ran the numbers on pride in being an American by political party from 2001 to 2025. Now, it used to be that Republicans, though they ranked higher in patriotism, felt more patriotic, identified as being more patriotic than Democrats at all times. Around 2015, let's call it 10 years ago, Republicans and Democrats just went the opposite direction. Republicans' patriotism shot up. May have dipped a little bit. There is a dip during the Biden years, right? There's a dip, but still we're talking about north of 80, 85%. Okay. Extremely proud, very proud, moderately proud, right, to be American. And Democrats sunk down to the 50s? They averaged 40s, 50s, now down to 36%. Now, why am I bringing this up? Okay. Core fundamental value now, I'm going to call it a value of the Democratic Party now that they have embraced democratic socialists, brought them into the fold, have a candidate running in New York, basically merged largely as parties. Core fundamental value of the party has become the imaginary struggle. I'll call it the imaginary struggle because I don't think people in this country really understand what a struggle can be, given what, the kind of real suffering out there in the world. It's the video, right? We played it. It's the video of the guy who's at the border. He's going to go to Canada. He's going to leave the country. He's 60 years old and he's fleeing America because Donald J. Trump is president. And I remember I watched a clip and my first reaction, I just couldn't help but laugh. Because my father had to sneak across a border to get away from communists, to get away from the Russian army. There are people alive today who have had to escape their countries. I mentioned people fleeing Cuba on rafts where, an untimely demise, a terrible death was not just possible, but quite likely. And yet people did that. They sacrificed to come to America for freedom. And we have liberals here that believe that there is this struggle, and you see it in the context of the constant race baiting, class baiting, that everything is this process that is painful, where you're a victim, you can't do it, you need the government to help you. The 42 million people that are on SNAP benefits, to some extent, are a derivative of this democratic belief system. After all, if people tell you enough that you're a victim, if they tell you enough that you've been oppressed, if they tell you that you are burdened by a struggle that has been ongoing and that you really can't do anything about, right? You can't do anything about the struggle because guess what? The struggle existed before you. It's going to exist, well after you come and go. And so that's it. You can't do anything about it. The only way that you can survive is if you grab the helping hand of the Democratic Party. They will give you the benefits. They will give you the means to provide for yourself. They will write the equation in a way that protects you and your family against these oppressive evils that are perpetrated by, white Republicans largely and other odious characters. That's the Democratic Party. That's the pitch. You have to be miserable. You have to be down and out. You have to be a victim. You got to dwell on it too, right? You're constantly being reminded about all the racism around you, about all the bigotry, about all the hate. And the more you dwell on that, the darker your heart gets, the more despondent you get, the more hopeless you feel. And then right there, you've become the perfect Democrat. Now you're going to vote out of fear. You're going to vote to protect you from all of this stuff. And it's imaginary. This ideology makes people prisoners inside of themselves. What's conservatism? What's the opposite of this? I mean, I'll just tell you what I believe. I believe that we can make our own luck in the world. I think that hard work overcomes a lot. I don't think that America is inherently racist, bigoted, sexist, mean-spirited even. I think that this is a land of opportunity. I think that now as we kind of survey what's going around the world, particularly in places like Western Europe, which have long been, part of the so-called West, seeing the lack of freedom that they have, I think America still is the shining city on a hill. where there is an opportunity to be free, be left to work hard to make the dream happen. And there are things that are objectively harder, right? We're not discounting the fact that housing is expensive, and that there are places like California, and increasingly now even Las Vegas, where I live, is becoming very expensive to find housing, which didn't exist 10 years ago, let's say, where there was much more opportunity of getting housing at a reasonable price. These things they're real, right? These are not imaginary problems. But of course, the leftists will say the answer to this problem is our intervention. The answer to this problem, and this is where Zohran Mamdani goes with this, is rent control, for example. Okay, there's a real problem. New York is expensive. Why? New York is expensive largely because it's very difficult and expensive to build anything new. And then there is also a sizable portion of inventory tied up in rent-controlled, schemes. So these are landlords that have no incentive to either make improvements or expand the existing units or make more of it, because they're just going to be rent-controlled. And so the answer is more rent control. The answer is more disincentives for real estate builders, investors, developers to come in and build housing. You know how much red tape there is in California, LA, to build something? They have to get up there and hold press conferences. Oh, we got a couple houses approved in the Palisades. Sorry, it's been a year, but we're getting to it. We're getting permits out. You got the environmental people. You've got the ADA, the California disability people. You got all these reviews, and it languishes at these offices where they've hired a bunch of DEI morons to run the thing. And it's all designed to actually make it difficult to build, because the end purpose is to have less development, because these people believe that overdevelopment is bad. Some warped, environmental, societal-driven bias against building. And this is real. I mean, this is just a fact. And then these same people sit around and go, well, the rent is too damn high. And also, by the way, hashtag racism, also bigotry, also sexism. You can't do anything, and you can't buy anything, and you're screwed. And the only people that can fix it are the Democrats. And Zohran Mamdani's back to talking about this. This is, I had to take a break, but rent control. This is the answer. 2025, almost 2026, and the Democratic Party is still talking about a system that has absolutely screwed every city, every metropolitan district that has been tried in. Rent control. This is their great big idea. This is Zohran Mamdani, the bright new face of the Democratic Socialist kleptocracy that's coming to take over America. Yeah, thank you, no thank you. Sam Mirejovsky here, fired up behind the What's Right microphone. Folks, don't go anywhere. Be right back. This is good news. Robbie, I just saw this come across my phone here. Apparently, they've discovered that men who break traffic rules make the best husbands. I sent it to my wife right away. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Welcome back. The What's Right show brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, the only law firm to trust for your personal injury case. You need a lawyer. Get one, and get the right one today. 702-820-1234, offices in Nevada and California, because you deserve what's right. Yeah, apparently psychologists in the study are saying that a man's willingness to bend the rules can reveal adaptability, quick thinking, and problem-solving creativity, traits that often carry over into marriage and family life. So, if you're a guy that breaks traffic rules, apparently that is a good thing for your marriage. Zohran Mamdani, this would not be a good thing for my marriage. I'll tell you that. Imagine, I don't know, my kids are all, I think, pretty common sense. We talk a lot about politics. Obviously, we've spoken a lot about communism when I take them to Eastern Europe and we're in the Czech Republic visiting family. I always talk about the history of the country. So hopefully I have taught them and raised them well. If they come home supporting, 10 years from now, supporting a guy like Mamdani, I don't know what I would do with myself. I would lose my mind, Robbie. I would absolutely lose my mind. Here's Mamdani giving a rousing speech about rent control. See, I told you, these are bad ideas from Christmas past that have failed everywhere they've been tried. And it's basic economics, right? I mean, just to be clear, right? Well, let's talk about Argentina. Milei had a big victory there the other day. Won a lot more of the vote than he anticipated, and he's within, I think, 3 seats of taking the lower chamber away from the Peronists. So people thought that Javier Milei was on his way out. Nope. Argentina voting back in. One of the first things that he did when he came to power was do away with rent control, and all of a sudden prices shot way up. And leftists all around said, Sam, see, this is a problem. Do you know what happened after that? They actually ended up lower than they were before the change. Landlords, free to charge whatever they wanted, tested the waters. They set rates that were unreasonably high. Guess who corrected them? Well, it wasn't the government, because that's not how it's supposed to work in a market economy. The market economy corrected them. They were humbled by reality. And the reality in a market economy is what the purchase power is of the average person. It's one thing if you've got a singular residence that is spectacular. Think about this, like a corner apartment overlooking Central Park, penthouse apartment. And there's, even in New York, a fixed number of people who would want that. But also those people have almost unlimited money. So is it $30,000 a month? Is it $50,000? Is it $70,000? Those are big numbers. But for an average apartment, for an average person, it all comes down to what that average person is able to pay. People can't pay all of their paycheck for housing. They have to have something left over for food. Well, unless they're on SNAP benefits. So suddenly the market began, and in Argentina's case, the prices went way down and settled at a place that was lower than before rent control was abolished. Now, Zohran Mamdani wants to add a bunch of new units, 2 million rent-controlled units. Rent stabilized is the word because they like to rename things. Rent-stabilized apartments in New York. Listen to this.
Here is what we stand for, my friends. We are going to freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants and use every resource at our disposal to build housing for everyone who needs it. We are going to eliminate the fare on every single bus line and make what are currently the slowest buses in the nation move around this city with ease. And we are going to create universal childcare at no cost to parents. So New Yorkers can raise their family in the city they love.
Everybody clapping for this is a lobotomized idiot. I don't know what else to tell you. There's going to be 2 million more rent-controlled apartments, meaning the landlord won't be able to charge market rate. Okay? Number one. Number two, they're going to build housing that is free and affordable. I don't know what that means. Okay, they're building housing. Who's building the housing? The government? Has there ever been any government housing in the history of the world that anybody would actually want to live in? Number one question. Number two, it still costs money. Where's that money going to come from? Because there's no such thing as free. And then, I guess finally, these buses that are running slowly when their people are paying for them. Now we're going to make them free, and the buses are going to operate better. When in the history of anything in the economy has something that has suddenly become free and no cost worked better? Oh, and the child care thing. I get so much ick from that. Every sex assault case that I've ever worked as an attorney has, well, I'm going to say a large part of them are driven by basically people placing their children in the care of adults that they don't really know. So I'm picturing some sort of government-run program taking care of kids in New York. It's actually horrifying to think about. All of it. All of this. Absolute total disaster. What happens next politically for the country when we come back? Yeah, just minutes ago, Ray Lujan, Democrat, New Mexico, introducing the Keep, SNAP, and WIC Funded Act of 2025 standalone bill that would provide funding for the programs amid the shutdown. This is dead on arrival on the Republican side. I'd be shocked if it gets any bites. Maybe Josh Hawley would sign on to that. Sam Mirejovsky here, News Talk 840 KXNT, the What's Right show brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. I bring up Josh Hawley because he gave an impassioned op-ed plea in the New York Times, decrying the 42 million Americans that are going to go hungry because of the shutdown. And as always, Josh Hawley seems to lose the point, although he's a Republican. He doesn't understand that we ought to be maybe asking, why are 1 in 8 Americans on welfare? I mean, we don't have people. I mean, what's our unemployment rate? When I think about it in those terms, I mean, it's astronomically high. Able-bodied people are on the take. So people are obviously asking questions and talking about this, even reasonable people, and it's one of the many unintended consequences the Democrats have to contend with here amidst the shutdown of their own making. Now, well, I tell you, looking at the poll numbers, right, and I mentioned this last hour, CNN did a deep dive into how the needle is moving for the Democrats and the Republicans, generic ballots and such, and specifically current members of Congress. And it's not good for the Democrats, right? Republicans are up, Democrats are down, and going into just the 1 year mark away from the midterms when Democrats ought to be picking up some steam. Generally, in a cycle like this, when you've got one party, Republicans in power, there tends to be some frustration a year in. And so it's usually the time when, when people start to think, well, I got to support the other party. So you'd expect to see a bit of a dip. Not happening. People are not buying it. So there it is. Okay. I got to tell you, this is, to me, cause for some degree of positivity or optimism. And I still feel, folks, tremendous amounts of optimism as I look at the country. Number one, Trump succeeded a year ago in winning the presidency and doing so in spite of, I mean, literally everything thrown at him. And I'm convinced widespread fraud across the electoral map. The greatest, I would say the greatest, but one of the places that the Democrats are most fearful for and of is California. California is a populous state. California has not a majority, but a sizable chunk of Republicans that do live there. I know this. I used to live in California. I was always a Republican, always conservative. So I lived in California surrounded by libs and ultimately decided to make my escape to Nevada for a variety of reasons. But but nonetheless, I recognize that California is not a lost cause. And I heard a great point here, and it dovetails to the article I mentioned yesterday and today, the Semaphore piece that says basically most of America, a significant portion of Americans are completely against the left-wing ideas that have wrecked the Democratic Party. The broad findings from a group called Welcome, where they consulted hundreds of thousands of voters, right? This is not a study or a survey of 2,000 or 3,000 likely voters. Hundreds of thousands of voters over 6 months concluded 70% of voters think the Democratic Party's out of touch. And what did they say next? Well, it's all the LGBTQIA plus nonsense, climate change, abolish jails, abolish, ICE, abolish the police, defund crime fighting, all that stuff. People don't like it. And there was a great moment that happened here. I will play it here. Hold on. Where do we have this clip? Well, okay. This was yesterday, CNN Newsnight roundtable. Anna Kasparian, who is over at the Young Turks podcast, sidekick there, talking to Neera Tanden. And they're talking about Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom yesterday, the big news over the weekend, he admitted that he has presidential aspirations. And anyway, and so here, here's what, I'm going to play this segment here, but listen to this very fascinating thing and great take on what's going on in California.
I don't know about all that, but I will concede that Gavin Newsom's leadership in California has been a complete and utter disaster. As a Californian, I 100% have experienced he's out to lunch, right? Like, he changes his ideology depending on what he thinks is fresh and what's hip at any given moment. 76% of Californians voted in favor of something known as Prop 36, which is to roll back some of the soft on crime policies. That requires funding. He has been pushing back against adequately funding the efforts to essentially roll back those policies to ensure that
you're
people
you're for his more pro-crime strategy. You're for the more pro-crime fighting strategy. Just to be clear.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes,
Good.
yes.
Okay. So that's important. So you think it's important to have the investments in fighting crime? Okay. Because
100%. Yes.
Because.
Okay. So Neera Tanden is like, she's a former Biden official, by the way. So these are two liberals talking about this. But I love that Kasparian brought this up, because I brought this up previously too, that even in radical, so-called, radical left-wing California, wackadoodle California, when it came to an issue, forget party, but when it came to an issue, are we tough on crime, or are we going to be continuing with our lax on crime policy? 76%, right? 3/4 of the state voted in favor of rolling back the soft on crime agenda. This is enormously huge. And by the way, as Gavin Newsom gears up to run on a national level, he's going to have to explain away why he has literally working against the will of the people in his state and defunding, refusing to pay for Prop 36, Prop 36, denying it full funding in an effort to scuttle it. See, it's an example of what the article is saying, and what, my gut, I think your gut as well, has told us that this radical leftism that the Democratic Party has adopted and is doubling down on now is just repugnant to a majority of people. So Anna Kasparian goes on, this is continuing the conversation here about the homeless handling in prisons and whatnot, all the stuff that's just a horror show in California and many blue cities and states across the country.
A big challenge among some of the left has been not supporting that in the past. So you're saying
wrong.
he's not.
They're wrong.
He's not doing enough to fight
I think
crime.
the left wanted prison reform. The left wanted better police training. The left wanted real reforms where people aren't getting shot as they're running away from cops and unarmed. What we got instead is the premature closure of 4 prisons. Gavin Newsom is preparing to shut down the 5th state prison. As a result, the county prisons are full to the brim of inmates, basically. And then what they do is they end up releasing people early because they don't have room for them. So Gavin Newsom, and that's just one of the issues I have with Gavin Newsom. Another issue is $24 billion in California taxpayer money gone. It was supposed to help the homeless. It didn't help the homeless. It got funneled to all these nonprofits that squandered that money.
Well, the whole USAID and NGO scam has been laid bare. These are just slush funds where federal and state dollars go to be dispersed among people who are politically reliable to the Democratic Party. So it's just normal stuff. But anyone objectively can walk around San Francisco and say this place is worse off than it was 20 years ago. That the administration of Mayor Gavin Newsom, then Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom for 2 terms, and finally Governor Gavin Newsom has left a once great American city looking like a war zone. And you can say this about LA, you can say this about every blue city, every blue shining metropolis now covered in human poo. Tell me one American city, one, that has been made better by leftists. And I'll tell you this, Anna Kasparian is maybe right in her, maybe a logical group of friends where they're more normal Democrats. And like, of course, yeah, we just want police not to kill unarmed people. Well, guess what? I don't want that either. You don't want that. What the hell kind of a comment is that? I mean, of course we want the best possible police. We ought to pay police well. We ought to train and develop. We ought to not, by the way, hire based on DEI. We ought to hire the most qualified people we can find. This is how we ought to operate. You're not going to get any dispute from anybody on our side that we should, what does she say? Right. The left wanted better police training, wanted real reforms where people aren't getting shot as they're running away from cops. Okay. We're good with that. But the problem is that the reasonable leftists are maybe not outnumbered, but they're certainly outshouted by all of the crazies who want to defund the police, who go out there and sloganeer the way Mamdani is now about rents, about childcare, about free this, free that, everything for free. You get something for free. Everybody gets a car. Everybody gets a bus. Everybody gets an apartment. And we'll worry about who pays for it, where all that good free stuff comes from later. One giant asterisk. See Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. Be right back in a moment.
The Salmon Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Donald Trump in Japan meeting the new Japanese prime minister. There's videos of him walking around the ballroom with her. She is the host, of course, the hostess. So she's leading him around, basically pointing him in different directions. And the liberal internet is exploding with accusations that this is Trump's dementia on display. These people won't stop. What is it? They got to pick one. Either Trump, he's doing all of this stuff. He's touring around the world when he should be sitting at home in the White House. minding the government shutdown, or he's out there traveling the world and basically incompetent to do so. When I, quite frankly, have not seen a president like this with this level of energy and effectiveness since Trump left the White House in 2021. What's that, Robbie? You think he's a Japanese asset? Well, Operation Arctic Frost would certainly think so. Incidentally, Arctic Frost. This is the investigation into all the collusion and investigating of Trump and his various allies. The House committee of the Department of Justice has now basically found that there were a bunch of FBI field offices across the country used to conduct this investigation. The investigators spent thousands of dollars to travel and conduct more than 40 interviews. They met with Steve Bannon, Scott Perry, Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, my good friend, Mark Meadows. They were all under investigation. Another 111 individuals, including Peter Navarro and Dan Scavino and Ed Martin, were also potentially under investigation. But the real scoop now, and this is a big development, we are finding that the now under review, the executive orders under Biden, they're all getting questioned. So the Department of Justice is now looking at this. And I remember when the issue first came up of the auto pen. And I said, this is going to be a matter of first impression for the Supreme Court. This case will almost certainly go to the Supreme Court because it is an untested constitutional question. What is it? What's the question? Well, putting on my little lawyer hat over here, on the What's Right show, Sam Mirejovsky here, your favorite recovering Californian, also a lawyer by day. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, nobody's ever tested this, right? We don't know what the law is related to a president who doesn't know where he is, who he is, half the time is drooling from the corner of his mouth. The technical Latin word for this would be non compos mentis. This president who is basically just sitting there, who ought not to be president, who ought to be removed from office, and everything is being done behind his back by people who are de facto running the presidency. Now, there are certain moments in time in our nation's history when wives, like Eleanor Roosevelt with FDR at times when he was incapacitated for a while, that she was running the White House, but never anybody, I don't think there's ever been an accusation of for years somebody has been running the presidency who is not the president. So the Supreme Court will have to weigh if and decide whether every executive order that was signed by the Biden auto pen and wasn't explicitly based on some, standards or terms approved or ordered by the president, determine if those are now null and void. This would include the pardons too, by the way. So there's a lot. It's heating up. And precisely as this whole farce is coming to light, and we find out all these Arctic Frost documents coming out, and of course, Crossfire Hurricane, we have a grand jury is getting impaneled in Florida to hear evidence there. We also have the currently the DOJ, Trump DOJ, telling California, we're going to come and we're going to monitor your election next week. And this has Gavin Newsom wigging out. Back to Prop 36, back to what I played the clip by Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks. Anna Kasparian talking about how in California, went to the voters a few years back. Do we roll back some of the soft on crime policies? It was a proposition. Prop 36 passed 76% of the vote. So there are Californians who are not going to be down with the redistricting effort, who don't want to reward us, who aren't just foaming at the mouth anti-Trump. Independents, plenty of independents, plenty even of some reasonable Democrats, I think. And I think Newsom was so intent he's going to get this done. It's going to be a signature legislation. He's going to redistrict. He's going to be the darling of the Democratic Party, win the primary handily as the principal opponent to Trump. And now all of a sudden this plan is at risk. Because if we monitor that election, harder to cheat. Do you see the ridiculous Newsom interview over the weekend? He went on a podcast. This is so over the top. He starts talking about how he grew up poor. This guy is heir to the Getty family fortune. Like, this is he's not a billionaire himself, but family is surrounded by billionaires. Listen, I got to get to this after the break here, but all right, it's just so wild. Yeah, we'll get to it here. Brief obscene profit timeout, as Rush would call it. Back after this. Greetings and welcome. The What's Right show is on, brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. So, before I was rudely interrupted by the break, I know, it snuck up on me. I want to play this Newsom clip over the weekend. He sat down for a podcast. It was the most ridiculous thing I'd heard. This was a All the Smoke podcast, I think, is what it's called. Matt Barnes, Stephen Jackson. And Gavin Newsom, even sort of the people there, the other hosts are black. Okay, so all of a sudden, Gavin Newsom adopts this weird accent. I don't know, sounds a little urban to me, and starts trying to relate to these guys with stories of how he ate Wonder Bread and sat on the floor. I mean, this is insane. I mean, guy grew up as a multi-millionaire. Listen.
But also, you know, it was also about paying the bills, man. And it was just like hustling. And so I was out there kind of raising myself, turning on the TV, started, you know, just getting obsessed, you know, sitting there with the, you know, the Wonder Bread and 5 stacks of,
hey, it's like the White Stack 5 story.
Come on. Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Yeah,
bro.
I grew up on macaroni and cheese, bro. Can I just, if the Democrats keep this up, Trump's actually going to end up getting a third term. You know why? First off, let's take Trump out of it for a second. Imagine that Newsom runs against J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance has an actual honest-to-goodness story about his childhood that has been, where he wrote a book about it and turned it into a movie. And it seems to be real. And it's a relatable story for a broad number of Americans. I'm convinced of that. So in a J.D. Vance versus Gavin Newsom story, they could start talking about Gavin Newsom's impoverished upbringing all they want. J.D. Vance is going to slice him and dice him. Okay. But can I say something? What I love about Trump, and it's really brilliant when you think about it, Trump is able to be absolutely relatable. At the same time, he's an unabashed billionaire. He has a gilded penthouse, a triplex penthouse overlooking Central Park. He has Mar-a-Lago. He has beautiful homes, golf courses. He flies in a giant gilded inside airplane, has a helicopter. And at no point does a guy like Trump pretend that he grew up any differently than he grew up. He talks about his great upbringing and he shares pictures of himself ensconced in a life of privilege, and he's just real about it. People hate fakers. We have the ick from fake. And Gavin Newsom is the ultimate of fake. I don't see it. I don't know how it goes anywhere. And I'm layering this on top of the very substantive takedown of the Democratic Party as it stands right now, that they really don't promise anything that people are buying. And then when you add to it this phoniness, you realize what's really there. There's no there. I saw this unpopular Democratic policies. They took this, there's just a study that was done about what overall nationally, right? Overall nationally, net support, and it's like taking the most unpopular of the Democratic policies. So let's say creating, for example, let's start with something innocuous, a $3,000 child allowance available to all families, $3,000 allowance. That has net support of negative 20%. Let's go up the list a little bit. Abolish the death penalty. Now, folks, if it were up to me, we'd start, publicly hanging people. Okay, enough is enough. I'd just town square, whatever, in front of City Hall, just bring back the gallows. Okay, that is abolishing the death penalty. Negative 22% in net overall public support of this. How about cutting police budgets by 10%? Whew. Negative 48%. What about abolishing prisons? Hear about that a lot. There's a prominent liberal guy here in town. I'm not going to name him, but he used to be a judge. He's an attorney, and he always talks about abolishing prison. Prisons don't fix anything, Sam. He tells me this all the time. I said, yeah, but I want the bad guy in prison. I don't want him roaming the same streets that my, kids use to, walk to school. Okay, no thank you. So that abolishing prisons, negative 55% net support. How about abolishing the police? That's at the top of the list. The worst performing one, negative 64% of net popular support. Okay. What's the takeaway in all this? Nobody wants what they're selling. And the crazy thing is, as the Democratic Party continues to embrace socialism and move further up this unpopular list of policy positions, and when they are represented by people like this incredible phony Gavin Newsom, I just think that it's just gonna give people the ick. It is giving people, and it's not going to succeed nationally. Can you imagine if a national election were to be held tomorrow? Let's say Trump had to run for re-election tomorrow, and he ran against, and I don't care which Democrat you pick. I saw today that people are pushing a Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg ticket. Please, for the love of everything that's great in the world, please do that, Democrats. Make my day. But I don't care who you pick. It could be Gavin Newsom. It could be somebody more moderate. I don't care. Trump's winning it. Trump remains popular. I guarantee it. Why? Because everything he ran on, by and large, he's doing. There's not one thing that Trump is doing that people are against. I saw some scuttlebutt today among us conservatives, a little bit of an internecine squabble regarding threats made against Venezuela. Basically, somebody inside the Trump administration said, it was time for Maduro to go. And the response from many, and I get it, I get the emotion. The thought was, well, I guess we're doing regime change again, right? This is not something we voted for. But if you understand the amount of fentanyl and other drugs that flow in the country deliberately by design from Venezuela, then you realize that Trump did run on stopping fentanyl entering the country. That was an important position for him. It was an important position in the primary. I would argue, for example, that Vivek Ramaswamy, one of his core positions that made him popular and gave him traction is he wanted to seal the Canadian border to prevent drugs from Canada coming into the country. So this, this is something that we absolutely wanted. So back to my original point, I'm just telling you, if the election were held today, even amidst the government shutdown, Trump would run away with this. And that's why last month, Gavin Newsom, talking to Bill Clinton at the Clinton Global Initiative, had to be basically encouraged by Bill Clinton to tell us, Gavin, what's good in California? Tell us.
Tell us what you think we should know about what's going right in California.
Well, I appreciate the context. Look, California is America, but only more so. We're the most, in the spirit of your introductory remarks, and just to set the scene, it's the size of 21 state populations combined. It's the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. 27% of my state is foreign-born. We practice pluralism. It's a point of pride. I say that because it needs to be said, and you reinforce it here today. It's in that diversity that we have achieved so much strength.
That slogan worked 15 years ago. Diversity is our strength. Nobody believes it anymore. No one thinks that's real. The girls raped in the Netherlands by asylum seekers from some country X in the Middle East. Diversity was not her strength. Diversity, sharing locker rooms with sexual predators because they are men pretending to be women, is not diversity as our strength. Mutilating little children, 10-year-old kids, forever altering them, preventing them from maturing sexually, having kids of their own, being able to reproduce, hell, even operate sexually because of the barbaric gender-conforming care given to them by ideological doctors, is not diversity, strength-inducing diversity. We use the word, this is, Robbie, exactly. Newsom is using, I got it. Okay, Robbie's talking to me here. Yes, Newsom is using diversity to gloss over the stuff the accomplishments he can't qualify in California. They talk about California as the 4th largest, the 7th largest, 8th largest, 9th largest economy in the world. We all understand. We get it. That California would be the _1 state in the country, given its location, its weather, right? Its, infrastructure that was built once upon a time. Meaning its ports, right? There's several important ports in California. I mean, you absolutely would be the #1 economy in the world, far and away, if it weren't for the Democratic Party, if it weren't for crazy left-wing liberal policies. Everything that the left loves, every bit of that, cosmopolitan, I'm going to a fancy restaurant tonight and a gastropub, and then we're going to the theater and all this stuff. And I hear people like this talking that are maybe from New York. And then they go, oh, I support Zohran Mamdani. And the first thought, the thought that I always have over and over again is, so you love living in a city that was built by raw capitalism, okay? The Carnegies, the Mellons, okay? The robber barons were these men that came in and just with brute force and grit created incredibly beautiful buildings and avenues and parks, and everything you love about New York was built by capitalism. Even that pesky Trump Tower there was built by a guy who had a dream to be on Park Avenue. What do they contribute to it? What do they bring to the table? They just want to steal it all and convert it into dollars and cents to give away to the people they owe political favors to. They are deconstructionists. They are destroyers. They should never be allowed to have any amount of real political power in this country. See Mirejovsky here. What's Right Radio Network, back in a moment. Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here. What's Right Media Network, at What's Right Sam on X. And of course, my email's sam@whatsrightshow.com. So, I wanted to play this too, because this is where the Democratic Party used to be, right? Remember in 1994, Contract with America, in comes the Republican Revolution led by Newt Gingrich. It was certainly in my lifetime the most effective nationalizing of a midterm election campaign I've ever seen. And it's something that the Republicans have not been able to seize on or really replicate since. Newt Gingrich is legendary for this. And in fact, it prompted Bill Clinton, ever the wise political strategist, to recognize where the wind was blowing from and revert course. It caused Clinton to become much more moderate. Pre-midterm drubbing in 94, Clinton was all gung-ho with Hillary, then the First Lady. The future president of the United States probably was just a little glimmer in her eye, thinking of what could be when she was in charge. Hillary tasked with coming up with a national health care scheme. And it went over about as well as a lead balloon. You remember this? People were none too pleased. Who elected her to do anything? Can I give you just a funny aside? So I had a teacher in middle school. Yeah, this was middle school, because it would have been, call it 92, 93. So right before high school, maybe 8th grade. So 8th grade, I'm talking, and I said to my teacher, hey, who elected Hillary Clinton to do anything? And, this is a public school, and public school teachers are, dare I say, fairly liberal. So this particular teacher says to me, but nice, in a spirit of trying to educate me, saying, well, there's a lot of people that work for the president. There's cabinet secretaries that work. Who elected? Nobody elected them. Yeah, of course it's me. So I'm, in the back. I go, excuse me, I'm not going to tell you. What did I say? I said, well, advice and consent of the Senate. I mean, these are appointments that have to be approved by the Senate. Nobody approved Hillary to, basically reorder the U.S. economy. So the conversation ended. So all that was going on. And, Bill Clinton reversed course. He absolutely did. He moderated. And by the time it came to him giving a speech, I think this was a State of the Union speech, in 1995, when it comes to immigration, for example, this is very, almost Trump-like.
All Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more, by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens. In the budget I will present to you, we will try to do more to speed the deportation of illegal aliens who are arrested for crimes, to better identify illegal aliens in the workplace, as recommended by the commission headed by former Congresswoman Barbara Jordan. We are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation of laws. It is wrong and ultimately self-defeating for a nation of immigrants to permit the kind of abuse of our immigration laws we have seen in recent years, and we must do more to stop it.
Astonishing, right? They also got welfare reform done. Remember that? Got a plan together where people were weaned off the dole. Welfare became temporary. You had to work. You had to show proof of work. Look at, I mean, this is 20 years ago. Well, 30 years ago. Gosh, my God, time flies. 30 years ago. This is not, I remember all of this happening. But the radical departure of the Democratic Party really started in earnest under Obama. I think when we reflect back on the Obama presidency, we realize this is where it all went sideways. And I have a comment about this too, because of all the things that are generally known that Obama did to destroy the country, the one that I think he'll be most remembered for is the one that's getting developed, or it's going to come to light now as Crossfire Hurricane comes to light. People like to say, and it's hyperbole, right, when they say it's a constitutional crisis. Something that Trump does is a constitutional crisis. It's a constitutional crisis. We use this all the time. The real constitutional crisis that we're going to discover is twofold. One, Obama deliberately conspired to overthrow Trump's presidency, and then Biden later, together with the help of Obama people, basically ran a White House that was operated without any real executive authority. And these are questions that are going to have to be wrestled with all the way up to the Supreme Court. That's a constitutional crisis, to be honest. Okay, folks, see you tomorrow. I'll be back.